You think you've got my number figured out? A motive born in drought and brevity. And if I'm not the soul of your design, I blatantly decline your remedy. Don't box me in, don't, or I'll leave. I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free, I'd rather be a leader, I'd rather be a queen, I'd rather be a singer in a trashy cover band. I'd rather be a closer, I'd rather be clean, I'd rather be a poser in a magazine, I'd rather be pretty much anything else than your machine. I wasn't always just a single shade, a palette full of gray in reverie. And I can burn it brighter than the sun. I have a golden gun inside of me. Don't box me in, don't, or I'll leave. I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free, I'd rather be a leader, I'd rather be a queen, I'd rather be a singer in a trashy cover band. I'd rather be a closer, I'd rather be clean, I'd rather be a poser in a magazine, I'd rather be pretty much anything else. And if I fall behind, ignoring all the signs, and if I lose the fight, I still rage against the night. Don't box I'd rather be a dreamer, I'd rather be free, I'd rather be a leader, I'd rather be a queen, I'd rather be a singer in a trashy cover band. I'd rather be a closer, I'd rather be clean, I'd rather be a poser in a magazine, I'd rather be pretty much anything else than your machine.
Sorry about that, folks. Welcome to the Wednesday stream. I hope everyone's having an awesome Wednesday. Welcome, everybody. I hope everyone's doing all right. Derry Bennett, Quad Bennett, welcome. Trump ends healthcare and more trans rights. I did see that he or is trying to ban any trans person from being in the military, and he's also done or directed some executive order. I don't know. In any case, he's directed Marco Rubio to designate that the only factor that's going to matter is, quote, sex. So he's screwing with passports and all that stuff. Pretty disturbing stuff. One second, folks. Mouselander, welcome. Okay. I think we're okay. Wednesday, Helen's Day. Welcome. Hope you're doing all right. All right, folks, we have quite a few things to go through. So before we get started, thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. Thank you, Mouselander, for holding it down in the YouTube, folks. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us in this stream today. If you want to keep supporting the channel, there are many different ways of doing so. Please consider hitting that like button on the stream if you're on the YouTube, subscribing if you're on the YouTube as well, and following us here on Twitch. And if you want to support the channel directly, consider checking out the merch store, folks. Okay? And hitting !tip to support the channel directly. Also, join the YouTubes, yes. Also, consider subscribing to the Substack, folks. Subscribe to the Substack and join the Discord. All right, folks, let's get started because today we might have to go a little bit quick. Gotta be quick. I think this is probably a good place to start.
But how did Hitler do it? Well, with the support of millions of ordinary Germans who just wanted Germany to be great again, and business leaders who initially thought they could control him, plus a cadre of devout political allies willing to do whatever he said for the sake of power. A new piece by The Atlantic lays out how Hitler ended a German democracy and installed a dictatorship with blinding speed and entirely constitutional measures. In that period, Hitler emerged emboldened after being imprisoned for staging a coup. His rage and xenophobia gained followers after the financial ruin of World War I and the Great Depression, and helped get him selected as chancellor.
Yeah, I mean, like, man, if history isn't rhyming right now, you know, if history isn't right, and like, again, this is not new, by the way. this has been a thing that I've been talking about since the beginning, since 2000, since his first since his first term. A lot of left-leaning people are calling this out, and we were told that it's too exaggerated. We were told that we're just overreacting. Well, as you'll see in the couple of articles ahead, no, I don't think we're overreacting. I think we're underreacting.
Once in power, he moved with shock and awe.
We're going to come back to that report in a moment, but first I want to focus on the use of that term shock and awe, because we are currently in that phase of Donald Trump's power grab. In fact, a Republican senator even anonymously described his approach as, quote, shock and awe, where you bring about rapid change so as to overwhelm your political opponents. It's also been described as a flood the zone strategy by Steve Bannon, who says Monday you hit, you flood the zone. Second week you'll flood the zone. It's working. It's just stunning to me what they're doing, and it's not getting covered because it's too much. They're overwhelming the system. And that is exactly what is happening right now. Both Democrats and the media are struggling to keep up with everything that he's doing because it's just too much. That's by design, and it's working. In fact, the leader of House Democrats put out this cryptic tweet feigning powerlessness and basically said, well, it's in God's hands now, which doesn't necessarily instill confidence in his constituents who put him there to fight. But thankfully, Dems are at least vowing to fight. The problem is they're also preemptively conceding on multiple battles in order to focus on the main war, which is worrying. So NBC's Sahil Kapoor outlines their Trump 2.0 strategy, and here's what that's going to look like.
House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries held a private meeting with Democrats and warned them that the administration is going to flood the zone and that Democrats could not afford to chase every single outrage, or nothing was going to sink in for the voters. That's according to a source in the room who I spoke to. The next day, here's what he told reporters. Take a listen.
The House Republican contract against America is an extreme plan that will not lower costs for everyday Americans. It will make our country more expensive.
And that's going to sum up the Democratic message for the coming weeks and months that Republicans don't have a plan to address the concerns at the kitchen table. It means Democrats will focus less on cultural issues. We saw lots of them vote for the Laken Riley Act to crack down on undocumented.
That's wild, man. That's wild. That's wild. We're going the complete opposite direction, man. Hey, Sock now, welcome. I hope that you are feeling well. These newsmen are effing vomitable. I hate that we have to talk about human rights just to be a person with ethics.
Immigrants and nonviolent crime. We also saw them refuse to take the bait on Trump's taunts over transgender rights, which they call a distraction from the lack of a Republican agenda. Senator Adam Schiff, who was in some ways the face of the first resistance, told me, quote, I think we have to pick our fights and not chase after every crazy squirrel.
Now, from purely a messaging standpoint, it makes sense to simplify it so you don't overwhelm voters with too much bullshit. But from a political and legal standpoint, you can't afford to not take the bait when it comes to issues
human
like immigration
rights,
and transgender.
Man. Like, when it comes to human rights, okay? Like, there's no, you can't, there's no middle ground here when it comes to basic human rights.
Rights, because even though the GOP does weaponize culture war issues to distract from economic issues, it doesn't change the fact that the culture war is not a victimless war. Innocent people are being detained by ICE, including veterans. Trans women are being transferred to men's prisons thanks to an executive order that Donald Trump signed, which will literally endanger their lives. Now, thankfully, a trans inmate is suing the Trump administration since this clearly infringes on her due process rights, but it shouldn't be left up to individuals to challenge this administration on their own. It's incumbent on the Democratic Party as the main opposition party to be an effective opposition party and respond with their own flood the zone approach. Right? It's their turn to do what Republicans did when Obama and Biden was president. They need to bog down this administration in every way they can, by obstructing, by suing them for every single illegal and unconstitutional move that they make. It is not in God's hands, Hakeem Jeffries. It's in your hands. And I don't expect Democrats to broadcast every single thing that they do to challenge this administration. Of course, stay focused on big picture issues. But what I do want to know is that Democrats are fucking fighting. And at this point in time, it's clear that not all of them are up to the task. But the thing about this shock and awe strategy is that it doesn't just overwhelm your opponents, it also demoralizes them.
Yeah.
And the fact that we're already seeing signs that some Democrats are overwhelmed and exasperated is very worrying, to put it mildly, because as Joy Reid is going to explain in this next clip, Hitler's shock and awe succeeded, which then allowed him to inflict real damage on the country.
Once in power, he moved with shock and awe, imprisoning his liberal opposition, abolishing states' rights, and imposing bans on left-wing newspapers. He fueled German public outrage by blaming European Jews for Germany's problems. Notably, he and his Minister of Public Enlightenment...
Yeah, like, blaming immigrants for the nation's problems.
...and propaganda, Joseph Goebbels, launched a massive propaganda campaign that labeled Jews as carriers of deadly diseases and violent terrorists, defeating the Jews of
The same thing that's happening now.
Europe, who they viewed as subhuman, was a question of good conquering evil, which conditioned millions of Germans to celebrate Hitler and turn a blind eye to his brutality. If that sounds vaguely familiar, that's because it is. Similarities to what happened in Germany and what's happening now in America are just undeniable. History may not repeat verbatim, but it sure does rhyme. Trump and Steve
It's literally what I was talking about.
Miller, his former director of speechwriting, depict non-white immigrants as carriers of deadly diseases who are violent terrorists. Trump was returned to the presidency after staging a coup and has exerted control of media or social media in order to parrot anti-immigrant vitriol and openly hateful anti-LGBTQ language, which is what Meta just did. And then there are the business leaders who pay him, fund him, and think they can control him.
In other words, Trump's strategy is straight out of Hitler's playbook, and it's being executed masterfully. And even if he never goes as far as Hitler did, we need to respond to this threat with the expectation that he will.
Right, like that's the point. Like it doesn't matter if he wants to go all the way to like death camps, right? Like I'm not going to sit here and wait to find out if that's where he wants to go, okay? Or if that's where the people that are closest to him are pushing him to go. I'm not going to sit here and wait until that's resolved. Like that stuff needs to be cut now.
Because we can't afford to underestimate the threat that he poses. So on the subject of shock and awe, as you all know by now, Donald Trump instituted a freeze on federal funding that has wreaked havoc throughout the entire country. Disaster relief and government grants were frozen. Federal assistance programs were frozen. Worse, Medicaid portals were reportedly frozen in every single state, which meant that an estimated 90 million low-income Americans lost their health care like that. Now, at the time that I record this video, a federal judge has actually blocked his federal freeze, at least until February 3rd. And we also know that Medicaid portals have been restored, at least most of them, as far as we know. But at the time that I record this, we don't really know the implications of everything that's happening. And Trump's press secretary, at the time that this news broke on Tuesday, also didn't really know about the damage that they just inflicted on millions of Americans.
It wasn't clear to me whether you were saying that no Medicaid would be cut off. Obviously, a lot of this goes to states before it goes to individuals and so forth. So are you guaranteeing here that no individual now on Medicaid would see a cutoff because of the pause?
I'll check back on that.
We'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, whatever, man. That's so freaking messed up, man. That's so freaking messed up.
Kind of important to know, right? Now, it might seem like they're just pushing random buttons and they don't really know what each one does, but they're pressing the button to see what it does. But in actuality, they do know what they're doing, to be clear. Jennifer Jacobs of CBS reports that the White House said they were looking into the Medicaid outage and claimed that it was unrelated to the federal funding pause. But as Congressman Maxwell Frost points out, that is complete and utter bullshit, and they're not owning this policy because they know it's unpopular. And I think that's true, but just because it's unpopular doesn't mean that Trump isn't going to do it. I mean, pardoning the January 6th prisoners was not popular, but he still did it anyway, and it didn't really affect his approval rating. But I think that Trump primarily did this for two main reasons. First, he's trying to test the waters to see how much he can actually get away with. And second, if he inflicts mass damage over here, you're probably not going to see what's going on over there. But when it comes to how much he's able to get away with, the goal here is to introduce a policy that's so fucking bad, it makes the other bad policies look reasonable. It's the political equivalent of putting a pill in peanut butter so your dog will swallow it, right? But what does that look like in practice? Well, Republicans might not defend the Medicaid freeze because that's really going to harm their own constituents, but they will defend the freeze on school lunch programs, which is still going to hurt their constituents, albeit to a lesser extent. Case in point.
When you talk about school lunches, hey, I worked my way through high school.
1 second,
I don't know
folks.
about you, but I worked since I was, before I was even 13 years old. I was picking berries in the field before we had child labor laws.
Cognizant, welcome.
I was a paper boy.
1 second, folks. Give me a second. Would the pill and the peanut butter just get stuck to the roof of the dog's mouth? I don't know. Seems to be like a common thing, though. Bipedal Meatbag, welcome. You want to eat lunch? Get a job. Get 2 jobs. You lazy 5-year-old.
And when I was in high school, I worked my entire way through. You're telling me that kids who stay at home, instead of going to work at Burger King, McDonald's during the summer, should stay at home and get their free lunch instead of going to work. I think we need to have a top-down review. Think about where kids need to...
That's just like wild. Like, this is just lunacy, man. Like, this is just lunacy. Like, yeah, you think that it's okay for kids to have free lunch, man? They should be working, okay? Okay, that middle schooler should be working as a paper boy. Post haste. Okay? Echo Wrestle Dragon, welcome. And somehow these ghouls are still allowed to be in power.
Broad brush. I would say that's not necessarily a fair assessment of all of the kids. So you would say all the kids in your district who use the free lunch, for example, or breakfast, they're all just sitting at home and not working. Okay, I just want to clarify.
Okay, so just to clarify, because I don't know if she's going to do anything further in this clip, but just to clarify, we're talking about freaking children, man.
This gives us a chance. This gives us a chance, though, to see where is the money really being spent. Who can actually go and actually produce their own income? Who can actually go out there and do something that makes them have value? And
just to be clear, we're talking about children, okay? Just to be clear, to remind people, we're talking about children getting food, okay? So your 8-year-old is working at McDonald's or getting his rich kids free lunch.
And work skills for the future. I mean, how many people got their start in fast food restaurants when they were kids versus just giving a blanket rule that gives all kids lunches in high school who are capable of going out and actually getting a job and doing something that makes them have value, thinking about their future instead of thinking about how they're going to sponge off the government when they don't need to.
So that Republican congressman thinks it's a good idea to deny kids meals because they shouldn't be sponging off the government, because these kids should be working as opposed to, being kids and focusing on their schoolwork. We're seeing in real time how politicians are able to shift the Overton window to the right. They want you to think that letting students go hungry is reasonable because when compared to, say, letting poors die by denying them Medicaid coverage, letting kids go hungry sounds reasonable by comparison. That is how Trump is going to get away with so much, by creating that type of juxtaposition. But that brings me to the second reason why I think he's doing this: to create temporary distractions that are going to allow him to solidify permanent policy changes that really harm people. And I say this because while everyone was sent into a frenzy over this funding freeze, and rightfully so, by the way, I'm not saying that they shouldn't have been sent into a frenzy, but while people were focused on that, a lot of people might have missed the fact that Trump actually crippled the National Labor Relations Board at the same time by firing a Democratic member named Gwen Wilcox. And as labor lawyer Matt Brunig points out, this means that the NLRB now lacks quorum and cannot issue decisions. In other words, employers can exploit and abuse their workers with impunity so long as the NLRB is not able to reach a quorum. So if he faces enough backlash and undoes the pause on federal spending and Medicaid coverage is resumed and there's no issues going forward, that's awesome. But that doesn't change the fact that he's probably going to get away with this attack on the agency that is supposed to protect worker rights, since the lion's share of the time is being spent on the bigger threat, which is to people's health. So this shock and awe.
PPP loans are effing stupid. Yep. I propose mandatory child labor for all, including and especially rich kids. Yep. That reporter should have asked him if he has kids, did they work for their lunch, right?
Approach lets him get away with so much more than he's usually able to get away with. He's learned since he was in office that first time. Because, the NLRB is a scandal in and of itself, what he did there. But if he does several scandalous things simultaneously, people are naturally going to focus on the biggest scandals that affect the most people. And the Medicaid freeze is the biggest scandal, because Americans without healthcare could literally die. Low-income parents rely on Medicaid for so many things. I mean, people give birth with Medicaid coverage. That pause could leave them with thousands of dollars in medical bills that could bankrupt them. They can't afford it, hence why they're on Medicaid in the first place, because they qualify because they're low income. So this is why this shock and awe approach is so damn effective. The goal is to overwhelm everyone to the point where they just give up and tune out. But I'd be remiss to not talk about other genuinely disastrous moves that he's making that he's hoping you're not going to notice. For example, he signed an executive order that lays the groundwork for the deportation of students who express pro-Palestinian sentiment. And yet everybody says that, he's the free speech guy. The Republican Party is the First Amendment party. But yet we see this to no pushback whatsoever from Republicans. And just to be clear, these are students who are here legally, but they're being treated as if they're criminals if they dare to condemn Israel's genocide in Gaza. That is not allowed here. You can't object to war crimes that our government is supporting. And it's not just innocent foreign students who are at risk of deportation, because Trump has also laid the groundwork to deport American citizens as well.
Listen to me carefully. There is a private agreement being created right now between Trump and El Salvador's president to create an encampment in Salvador to deport U.S. citizens.
I don't want these violent repeat offenders in our country any more than I want illegal aliens from other countries who misbehave. I want them out of our country. I get them the hell out of our country along with others. Let them be brought to a foreign land and maintained by others for a very small fee as opposed to be maintained in our jails. Let them be brought out of our country and let them live there for a while. Let's see how they...
Now pay attention, because the groundwork is being laid right in front of our eyes and the media has fucking failed us. Trump administration is developing an asylum agreement with El Salvador's government that would allow the U.S. to deport migrants who are not from there. The arrangement known as the Safe Third Country Agreement would empower U.S. immigration officials to deport non-Salvadorian migrants to El Salvador, and once they're there, block them from requesting asylum back into the United States. Andrew Trump already signed an executive order that allows him and the DOJ to create private contracts with private prisons, to create more private prisons. And the reason why he wanted to do that was because those were going to be the migrant detention centers. But now he's saying those private prison contracts are too fucking expensive.
The private prison companies that charge us a fortune.
He wants to outsource them to Salvador. He thinks he's running this country like a business. And it hits harder when you know the facts, that in 2021, Black Americans were imprisoned at 5 times the rate of whites, while American Indians and Latinx people were imprisoned 4.2 and 2.4 times the rate of white people. When he's saying he wants to deport repeat offenders and criminals, that's who he's talking about. Make no mistake about it, the groundwork and foundation for Project 2025 has been laid right in front of our eyes. They're letting us know exactly what American superiority looks like.
Yeah. And what he's pointing out here has gone largely unnoticed because of everything else that's happening. I mean, shock and awe, right? But it's worrying, especially considering how Republicans have already raised the specter of deporting U.S. citizens. I mean, Mike Collins last week tweeted that the pastor who offended Donald Trump by asking him to have mercy should be deported. But while the goal is to deport some citizens, others have to worry about the prospect of not being able to leave. For example, LGBTQ plus activist Laurie Drennan is advising trans and non-binary people to not mail in their passports at this time, to update them or...
Man, this is scary shit, and I'm not gonna lie. And here I was going to go over something that's being proposed right now, but we'll get into it in a second. I'll be shouting out if I ever see immigration. La Migra. El Salvador won't have space for this.
Or for whatever reasons, since the State Department isn't recognizing trans identities and they're not giving people timelines when they're going to be returned, which means that you could very well not get your passport back if you're trans, which will restrict your travel, which is essential right now if things continue to go south. And yesterday, in the middle of the chaos that he caused due to his federal freeze, he released a sweeping executive order curtailing gender-affirming healthcare for all trans people under the age of 19. We're talking about adults here as well. Now, at the time that I record this video, it's unclear how this is going to directly affect trans youth, especially in blue states. But even if there is a minimal effect, it could be catastrophic for trans youth. The good news is that this doesn't go into effect right away, and it will be challenged because it is illegal. But it just goes to show you how much he's doing at such a fast pace. Now, there's also other ostensibly small changes that he's making that don't seem immediately consequential, but in the long term, they're going to prove to be disastrous. For example, he also put a pause on communications from all federal health agencies. So while the FDA can still notify the public of recalls, at least for now, they are not allowed to provide the public with updates to outbreaks linked to contaminated food. Moreover, the CDC can't issue mortality reports or guidance and updates to diseases, nor can they offer updates to the public about flu and COVID-19 vaccination rates, which were used by local health authorities to provide outreach to communities that were lagging behind the rest of the country. Now, on top of that, the United States Agency for International Development was told to halt work immediately, which means that developing countries are being cut off from life-saving treatment for HIV, for malaria, tuberculosis. This also means they're not going to be able to distribute medical supplies to newborn babies in these countries, which is crucial and life-saving. And last week, Trump floated the idea of abolishing FEMA, which would be utterly catastrophic for states in Tornado Alley and more hurricane-prone areas, and I can assure you we are not even scratching the surface. He signed more than 200 executive orders on day one, and it hasn't stopped. He's still signing executive orders, and this is all part of his shock and awe campaign. And a majority of the executive orders that he signed, by the way, were either partially or fully outlined in Project 2025, according to an analysis by Time. And his federal freeze is also part of Project 2025 as well, by the way. And remember, the goal of Project 2025 is to dismantle the administrative state and consolidate power into the executive branch, so that way there's no more checks. And here's how the federal spending freeze in particular advances that specific goal. Cameron Cordray writes, quote, "Temporary bullshit aside, this is a clear attempt to steal the single most important legislative power, budget making, and centralize it under the executive. Fundamentally anti-constitutional and blatantly authoritarian. This is genuine DEFCON 1 shit." He continues, "It has been decided several times in both the Supreme Court and the halls of Congress that the president does not have the authority to withhold or deny congressional funding in this matter. It's equivalent to senators attempting to give orders to the military." So we're arguably looking at a constitutional crisis on week 2. Not to mention, in week 1, on day 1 in particular, he tried to overturn birthright citizenship, which is literally codified in the U.S. Constitution, something he cannot do.
The truth is, behind closed doors, the P word became my secret sin at age 10.
But putting aside the...
That was a very uncomfortable ad. Trump orders opening of migrant detention center at Guantanamo Bay. Yes, that's exactly what I was alluding to. That's exactly what I was alluding to. What the F was that ad for? It's for some cringe, like Christian anti-porn stuff.
The policy implications of all of these things that he's doing, this is all being done because he's trying to grab power, right? The shock and awe approach is being masterfully used to help him consolidate power. It's working. He has completely and utterly incapacitated the federal government. And even though it is important for Democrats to not get bogged down by every little thing that he does and focus on, how this isn't going to bring down the cost of eggs, they also have to call a spade a spade. They have to describe this as the power grab that it is. I get that the whole democracy argument didn't really resonate with Americans, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't explain how what is happening here is genuinely destructive. And if the last message didn't work, they've got to revise it and make it land, because this is something that every American should care about. Right now, I've been critical of Democrats, but now I do want to give some of them credit because, aside from leadership, which is completely useless and feckless, in my opinion, there are Democrats who are not getting bogged down by Trump's shock and awe campaign. And those people who are not getting bogged down are progressives like AOC and Bernie Sanders. And they're not just pointing out that none of these moves are helping working class people. They're also providing Americans with something else, an alternative vision, which is what has been lacking from the Democratic Party for quite some time, and why their message wasn't landing with working class people. Because you can pinpoint problems, that's fine, that does work, but you also have to provide people with solutions. Trump was able to tap into this populism where he acknowledged problems that people were facing, but the solution that he provided, the vision that he provided, was fascist, and there was just no alternative to compete with that.
Yep.
The way that you defeat fascism, right-wing populism, in other words, is with left-wing populism, with true leftism. So Democrats have got to copy AOC and Bernie.
Yeah, you have to provide an alternative, right? Like, the Democratic plan should have been to provide an alternative not just to Trump, but to the deeply unpopular status quo that Biden presented. Otherwise, you're just going to lose people, man. That's what happened, or at least that's one of the big issues that happened. They didn't provide an answer to not just to Trump, but they didn't provide an answer to Biden. Oh my goodness.
Give up and tune out. But I'd be remiss to not talk about other genuine member named Gwen Wilcox. And as labor lawyer Matt Brunig points out, this means that the NLRB now lacks quorum and the administrative state and consolidate be utterly catastrophic for states in Tornado Alley and more linked to contaminated food. Moreover, the CDC can't issue mortality reports or guidance and updates to diseases, nor can they offer updates to the public about flu and COVID-19 vaccination rates, which were used by local health authorities to provide outreach to communities that were lagging behind the rest of the country. Now, on top of that, the United States Agency for International Development was told to halt work immediately, which means that developing countries are being cut off from life-saving treatment for HIV, for malaria, tuberculosis. This also means they're not going to be able to distribute medical supplies to newborn babies in these countries, which is crucial and life-saving. And last week, Trump floated the idea of abolishing FEMA, which would be utterly catastrophic for states in Tornado Alley and more hurricane-prone areas. And I can assure you, we are not even scratching the surface. He signed more than 200 executive orders on day one, and it hasn't stopped. He's still signing executive orders, and this is all part of his shock and awe campaign. And a majority of the executive orders that he signed, by the way, were either partially or fully outlined in Project 2025, according to an analysis by Time. And his federal freeze is also part of Project 2025 as well, by the way. And remember, the goal of Project 2025 is to dismantle the administrative state and consolidate power into the executive branch, so that way there's no more checks. And here's how the federal spending freeze in particular advances that specific goal. Cameron Cordray writes, quote, temporary bullshit aside, this is a clear attempt to steal the single most important legislative power, budget making, and centralize it under the executive. Fundamentally anti-constitutional and blatantly authoritarian. This is genuine DEFCON 1 shit. He continues, it has been decided several times in both the Supreme Court and the halls of Congress that the president does not have the authority to withhold or deny congressional funding in this matter. It's equivalent to senators attempting to give orders to the military. So we're arguably looking at a constitutional crisis on week 2. Not to mention, in week 1, on day 1 in particular, he tried to overturn birthright citizenship, which is literally codified in the U.S. Constitution, something he cannot do. But putting aside the policy implications of all of these things that he's doing, this is all being done because he's trying to grab power, right? The shock and awe approach is being masterfully used to help him consolidate power. It's working. He has completely and utterly incapacitated the federal government. And even though it is important for Democrats to not get bogged down by every little thing that he does and focus on, how this isn't going to bring down the cost of eggs, they also have to call a spade a spade. They have to describe this as the power grab that it is. I get that the whole democracy argument didn't really resonate with Americans, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't explain how what is happening here is genuinely destructive. And if the last message didn't work, they've got to revise it and make it land, because this is something that every American should care about. Right? Now, I've been critical of Democrats, but now I do want to give some of them credit because, aside from leadership, which is completely useless and feckless in my opinion, there are Democrats who are not getting bogged down by Trump's shock and awe campaign. And those people who are not getting bogged down are progressives like AOC and Bernie Sanders. And they're not just pointing out that none of these moves are helping working class people. They're also providing Americans with something else, an alternative vision, which is what has been lacking from the Democratic Party for quite some time, and why their message wasn't landing with working class people. Because you can pinpoint problems, that's fine, that does work, but you also have to provide people with solutions. Trump was able to tap into this populism where he acknowledged problems that people were facing, but the solution that he provided, the vision that he provided, was fascist, and there was just no alternative to compete with that. The way that you defeat fascism, right-wing populism, in other words, is with left-wing populism, with true leftism. So Democrats have got to copy AOC and Bernie Sanders. And it's not just the progressives, to be clear, even though I do have my disagreements with senators like Chris Murphy. I think that he's been really effective at calling out Trump's authoritarianism. Case in point.
So this is an attempt by Donald Trump to seize power. It sounds like a provocative thing to say, but how else do you describe what we have watched happen over the last week? The broad immunization of political violence, the illegal firing of inspectors general there to make sure that the money of the taxpayers isn't stolen. And today, the illegal and unconstitutional decision to put the President of the United States and no one else in charge of who gets federal money and who doesn't. What President Trump is doing is seizing control of the federal budget and deciding by himself who gets money and who doesn't. For two reasons. One, he wants to bank money so that he can afford his massive tax cut for billionaires and corporations. But second, so that he can hand out money to his friends, to the companies that are run by his billionaire donors, to states that voted for him, to congressional districts with members of Congress who are loyal to him, and so that he can deny money to any organization run by Democrats, to companies that are competitors to his billionaire friends, to congressional districts represented by his political opponents. This is what a king does. This is not how a democracy works. One man does not decide how taxpayers' money is spent so that it only gets sent to the president's political friends and it gets used to punish his political enemies. The scope of the damage that will be done is enormous.
And I think that's a good start. Listen, Republicans turned every single thing that Obama and Biden did into political scandals. Obama was knocked for wearing a tan suit and not properly saluting the troops. And Democrats need to do that exact same thing. Copy the Republicans. Turn everything that Donald Trump does into the biggest scandal ever, because it is. Don't get overwhelmed by the shock and awe. Use it to your advantage. Give voters an alternative vision. You have to obstruct every single thing that he does, and that means you stop fucking voting to confirm his cabinet picks, senators. You stop voting for their right-wing policies, right? Behave in a way that bogs him down. Behave as if you were a Republican in Congress while a Democrat is president. Respond to the situation with the urgency that it requires. Sue him every fucking time he breaks the law or violates the Constitution. Democrats are the ones who should be leading the charge, and they've got to explain to the American people that they are doing all of this to defend them, not just on mainstream media, not by tweets, but by going to rallies, town halls, podcasts. Like, meet people where they are, and you've got to have all hands on deck. Every Democrat has to have a unified message. Otherwise, Trump is going to get away with most of this shit. And right now, not all Democrats seem willing to fight. In fact, a lot of them are capitulating. 12 Senate Democrats collaborated with fascists to vote for the Laken Riley Act, which denies immigrants due process rights. Now, in the House, Democratic leaders, they're basically invisible. I mean, you see younger, more progressive members like AOC, as I mentioned, and even Maxwell Frost publicly challenging Trump. But leadership, they're not really anywhere to be found. Although they are planning an emergency meeting, but I kid you not, it's happening a day after Trump's federal spending freeze sent the country into chaos. I mean, what are we doing? If it's an emergency meeting, that means everyone returns to DC right now to fight. Otherwise, it's not really being treated like an emergency meeting, despite you calling it that. And the reason why I'm being so hard on Democrats, leadership in particular, is because they're supposed to be the main check on Trump's abuse of power. They're supposed to protect us from the damage that he is going to inflict on us. And they're not going to be effective at doing that if they don't have the energy to fight. And they have to be a strong opposition party. Otherwise, Trump is going to overwhelm them. And democracy, as a result, is not going to be here for the long term.
I mean, judging by like the types of responses that that the Democratic Party has offered or lack thereof, yeah, I'm not really holding my breath. Elwa, welcome. Face-eating leopards party. Yep.
So let's learn from the past and be cognizant of the fact that Trump is using the same playbook as every fascist throughout history, and let's make sure that our opposition is stronger than the opposition parties of the past who failed when it came time to stop fascism.
Mike is a total shitlib.
Fight to win or get out of the way and let AOC and folks like her take the helm. I wish that was like the case, because like, man, but these upper Democratic leadership are just like refusing to get out of the way. They're refusing to fight to the best of their ability, and they're refusing to get out of the way. Like AOC and the people that are actually trying to do something about it are doing it despite Democratic leadership, not because we're not with Democratic leadership, which is really freaking frustrating. The Comrade Kenny, thank you for the follow. Appreciate that.
Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing. So for the folks that haven't seen what went down today, or what went down earlier, RFK Jr. had his confirmation hearing, and oh boy, things got a little weird, man. Not gonna lie. How long until we abandon the Democrats completely? I mean, like, I think at the federal level. Hey, Heat, how's it going? First of all, at the federal level, I mean, like, I don't even know, man. Like, I don't know, like, what can we even do unless, like, the party decides to change? The only thing I can say is that, like, on local levels, the local Democratic parties are usually, depending on where you are, may vary. And some local Democratic parties that are fighting in the state elections are better than others. So, you know, it's kind of like how, you know, like notorious, how notoriously bad New York Democrats are. Okay, well, some Democrats in other states are better. So, like, you know, you kind of have to pick your battles here. But as far as the federal Democratic Party, I don't know, man. We need to do it now, and we need to do it now.
Are you supportive of these onesies?
I'm supportive.
Oh, dear God. Today was one hell of a day for Robert F. Kennedy Jr. It was the confirmation hearing for the potential Secretary of Health and Human Services. Fantastic. This guy with the brain worm that doesn't believe in vaccines. Awesome. All right, so let me get to a few clips of how insane this entire thing was. Insane from his end of it. Democrats did a pretty good job at grilling him here, though it's not going to make a whole hell of a difference considering the clowns that are already in the administration. But let's start with a clip from Elizabeth Warren, which pertains to this. The fact that RFK Jr. plans to keep a financial stake in lawsuits against the drug maker Merck. Meaning, based on what he decides to do as the HHS secretary, he can financially benefit. So, clearly this is a conflict of interest. This is a major issue. Elizabeth Warren grilled him on this, and watch how he responds.
Of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Senator, I support vaccines. I support.
No, he doesn't. That's just a flat out lie. They start with ignoring Hillary's call. When they go low, we go high. A 10-year losing strategy. Yep. When they go low, I get high. Oh, man.
The childhood schedule. I will do that. The only thing I want is good science, and that's it.
How about then say you won't make money off what you do as Secretary of HHS?
Before we go to Senator...
Look at that response. He very clearly is in this for his own personal financial gain. These are the same clowns claiming, oh, everybody else, all these doctors, all these scientists, they're just in it for the money. You clearly are in this for money. The fact that you will not remove yourself from this obvious conflict of interest says everything. Your reaction there says everything. That was the end of a minutes-long conversation where he simply would not answer that question. Let me get to the next clip. This has to do with the measles outbreak in Samoa that was in part, or I should say RFK Jr. in part laid the groundwork for this outbreak. But before I get to more details on this, let me get his side of the story.
I went there, nothing to do with vaccines. I went there to introduce a medical informatics system.
Oh, yeah.
That would digitalize records in Samoa and make health delivery much more efficient. I never gave any public statement about vaccines.
That's not true. That's not true. Literally, they said that the reason why that happened was because they took his advice. Okay? Like, he didn't say, like, oh, you shouldn't vaccinate or something like that. He made, like, these, like, suggestions, okay? And people took those suggestions, and like, what, 80-plus people died?
Not fine. A single Samoan who will say, I didn't get a vaccine because of Bobby Kennedy. I went in June of 2019. The measles outbreak started in August.
There you have it. He went in June of 2019, and the measles outbreak didn't start till August, which is a couple months later.
Right.
To be fair, his brainworm is still going through kindergarten, doesn't yet quite understand that August comes after June. But apart from that, I'm going to link to this story below the video because I think it's worth the full read if you want the full story from Mother Jones and David Korn here. But I'm going to quote a bit from it here because it's important to know what exactly went on. So,
but look at that trustworthy face. He's like a puppy dog, yeah.
There was a deadly measles outbreak that occurred in Samoa in 2019 and claimed the lives of 83 people, mostly children. So Children's Health Defense, the nonprofit anti-vax outfit he led until becoming a presidential candidate, had helped spread misinformation that contributed to the decline in measles vaccination that preceded the lethal eruption. And during his trip to Samoa, Kennedy had publicly supported leading vaccination opponents there, lending credibility to anti-vaxxers who were succeeding in increasing vaccine hesitation among Samoans. So they go on and showcase, whether it's blog posts, social media posts, images with leading anti-vaxxers there, people he was working with, that clearly he was working with them to help spread this vaccine misinformation, even though he's denying it here. Later on, Mother Jones goes on to write that Kennedy, as he claimed in the interview for Shot in the Arm being a documentary, may not have publicly urged Samoans to refuse the measles vaccine, but he encouraged those who did, and the group he led helped spread misinformation to discredit vaccinations there. So, his way of defending this is, you're not going to find one person who says that they didn't take the vaccine because of me. Yeah, because who the hell are you in Samoa? Who cares? Who cares about RFK Jr. in Samoa? But he was working with groups there, people that did have credibility in Samoa. He was working with those people to spread vaccine misinformation. So this defense he's using is just so disingenuous. Let me get to the next clip now, where despite all of this, despite everything he has been saying for years, he is in fact in support of vaccines, apparently, now.
News reports have claimed that I'm anti-vaccine or anti-industry.
Nah, man. News reports are reporting what you have done in the past, dude. Like, they didn't just get this out of nowhere, okay? And it's not just like one random tabloid that's making you out to be some like anti-vax kook, okay? There's a reason why news outlets are reporting it in that manner. When you and your vaccine skepticism directly lead to a measles outbreak that killed.
I am neither. I am pro-safe.
Whoa! That you kill. That your quote advice killed 80-something people. Yeah, man.
All right, so he's in fact big supporter of vaccines.
Yeah, fantastic.
His whole following is based around people who are anti-vax.
Right?
How can you all of a
like
sudden...
the only? By the way, the only people, the only reason the people on the right decided to like give RFK Jr. a chance, because like he was looking like an absolute lunatic during his very short run in the Democratic primary, is because of his anti-vax stuff. That's the reason the right wing was trying to get was open to him. Okay? Not because like he had a record of trying to be like a environmental lawyer. That's not why they liked him. Like even Trump said like, "Oh, you don't touch the golden or the liquid gold, Bobby. Okay? You're not." I'm not even joking. That's literally what he said. That's what Trump said. Like, I'm basically quoting him verbatim. Almost. Don't touch the liquid gold, Bobby. The reason why he's there is because he's anti-vax. Okay?
I didn't claim. No, actually, I'm a big supporter of vaccines. And he even goes on to say all his children are vaxxed, which he has mentioned before in I think it was on, maybe Joe Rogan's podcast or it was Lex Friedman's podcast, but he mentioned how all his kids are vaccinated, and he really regrets that, and he wishes they weren't. But like, he doesn't mention that part in his intro. It's just incredible. So such a sleazebag. So let me get to Bernie's moment here. Or at least I got two clips from Bernie, but this is where Bernie brings up the onesie that his own company is selling.
I think the gist of what you're trying to say today is you're really pro-vaccine, you want to ask questions. You have started a group called the Children's Health Defense. You're the originator. Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for defense. You're the originator. Right.
This is the group that he created, by the way, not anti-vax, right? Not anti-vax, by the way. Él era abierto porque él es un Kennedy, el nombre solamente. So basically, what he's saying is he is being carried by his weight, by his name alone. Which, to be quite frank, that's actually kind of true. Like, the reason why he's even like being entertained at all is because he's a Kennedy, right? But yeah, that makes me so sad. Yep.
Right now, as I understand it, on their website, they are selling what's called onesies. These are little things, clothing for babies. One of them is titled Unvaxxed, Unafraid. Next one, and they're sold for $26 a piece, by the way. Next one is No Vax, No Problem.
Right.
Now you're coming before this committee and you say
not an anti-vax, not an anti-vaxxer, right? Every family has one. This makes my pet turnip's head hurt.
You're pro-vaccine. Just want to ask some questions. And yet your organization is making money selling a child's product to parents for $26, which casts fundamental doubt on the usefulness of vaccines. Can you tell us now that you will, now that you are pro-vaccine, that you're going to have your organization take these products off the market?
Senator, I have no power over that organization. I'm not part of it. I resigned from the board.
That was just a few months ago.
Yeah.
You founded that. You certainly have power. You can make that call. Are you supportive of this?
I've had nothing to do with leadership.
Are you supportive of...
Yeah, like, hey, man, if it's true that you're no longer a part of this organization, then, like, you know, this should shock you, and you should immediately be like, I don't support any of that. I don't know what they're doing. That's not what that originally was started for, or whatever. Like, man, it doesn't really take that much. It should be like instant. But the truth is, he is an anti-vaxxer. He's a lunatic and should be absolutely nowhere near anything regarding health, much less in charge of the nation's health policies. Because A, he's not qualified in any way, shape, or form, and B, he's incredibly dangerous. It's wild. He agrees with it. Exactly. That's why he can't be like, I unequivocally do not support any of this. I am ashamed that, like, man, if he really wanted to, like, make a show of things, he could have been like, Senator, I was not aware that this was on my organization's website. I am deeply ashamed of what I am seeing and what I'm being presented with. I will look into this immediately, and I denounce this in the strongest possible terms. I no longer chair this, but however, I will do my best to outreach to the current organization leadership and tell them that this is wrong, and I don't want to be attached to this. Like, anything, man, anything. It's not that hard. But as you mentioned, like, he agrees with it. Like, that's why this is like, it should be an immediate denial.
These onesies.
I'm supportive of vaccines.
That's not what the question was. It's not what the question was.
I gotta get the "Are you supportive of these onesies?" as a sound drop on my soundboard here, because that is just an all timer. Are you supportive of these onesies? I love it. So, like, his company, their whole thing is being anti-vax. He can't come in here 2 months after apparently removing himself from the company and saying, "Oh, I'm very pro-vax, very pro-vaccine." Like, what? Who are you fooling? Like, just own it. At least own it.
Right, because, like, remember, the reason why you were there in the first place, is because you're anti-vax. So if you go against that, you know, the chances of the Republicans electing you are going to go down. He could just lie like the rest of the Trump cabinet. Right, you know, whatever. I guess he couldn't be, I don't know, the brainworm ate that part of his brain. That's waking up. Oh, okay. In the attempt to translate, it's waking up a part of my brain, and it's awesome.
Own it and try and defend it. But to pretend you're some other person now is just so stupid. All right, let me get to the other Bernie clip here. This one, I'd argue, may be a little more important, but the answer here is not surprising.
Do you agree with me that the United States should join every other major country on earth and guarantee health care to all people as a human right? Yes? No?
Like, that should be an immediate question. Like, if you genuinely don't believe in Medicare for all, or another way of putting it, if you don't believe that people just by the essence of being people and the essence of being in this country, in the wealthiest country in the world, if you don't believe that they should have healthcare as a fundamental human right, then just come out and say with it, man. Just be like, nah, bro, I don't believe in it. I don't believe that's a human right, and then move on. Like, come on, man, say it with your chest. This is the kind of stuff that really frustrates me in a lot of these hearings, you know, but
Senator,
right, that should be the first question. If the answer is no, end of interview. Right. You would think so, yeah.
Can't give you a yes or no answer to that question.
Healthcare a human right.
Like, that's not that. Like, what do you mean you can't give an answer to that? Like, you don't know if healthcare is deserving, is a human right? That should be disqualifying. You're supposed to be the head of human health and human services, right? Nah, listen, hey, facts-based comrade, go fuck yourself, okay? Like, come on, man. You know exactly what we're talking about. That is some bad faith shit. What qualifies as healthcare, man? Which is very broad, only medically necessary procedures or medications, or does it include elective medications? Bro, shut up. Literally, the entire rest of the world has already figured this out. Okay, do elective procedures count as healthcare? You can go fuck yourself. How about that for an elective procedure? The neurological syndrome that effed up RFK's voice is most likely caused because of being unvaccinated from red measles. That's pretty ironic. Yeah, if that's the case, like, because I mean, I didn't know that. But that tracks, right? An anti-vaxxer. Yeah, that tracks.
Is healthcare a human right?
In the way that free speech is a human right,
yeah.
I would say it's different, because if with free speech doesn't cost anybody anything, but in healthcare, if you smoke cigarettes for 20 years and you get cancer, you are now taking from the pool. That's
so disgusting. That is so disgusting, man. Like, oh yeah, dude, if you have cancer, man, and it's like, you know, because you smoke or whatever, then, like, you know, you're just a drag on society. So, like, I guess you shouldn't deserve healthcare, because that has a price, question mark. Or maybe, like, I don't know, man, if you had the entire nation as a healthcare pool, it would be, like, not that expensive in comparison to what we have now. Wolfglen, welcome. Health insurance pays for medically necessary election procedure with an authorization. Right. Like, this is why it makes no sense. This is why it makes no sense. Oh, who gets to decide that, bro? Whatever, man. This is so freaking, like, this is how you know, like, how badly people are brainwashed, that they're trying to, like, debate, bro, universal healthcare, when, like, literally every other freaking country has already figured this out. I mean, like, this is a no-brainer, man.
My man, you were a heroin addict for 14 years. And if you become HHS secretary, you're going to get government health care. Should you refuse that now? This is so dumb. How about sugar? How about alcohol? Anyone that consumes alcohol, eats candy, should they be kicked off healthcare too? We should live in a society that guarantees certain rights to people. In the vast majority of countries, in my country, in Canada, we guarantee healthcare to everyone. That is a human right. It should be a human right. RFK appears to think, no, it shouldn't be. So if that's the case, then I expect him to refuse his government-run healthcare because he was a heroin addict for 14 years, and according to him, he's still going through recovery. Just disgusting. The way that
that was framed.
The way things are prioritized.
The way that was framed is truly disgusting, man. If you're a human being, you deserve healthcare, okay? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's not who deserves it, it's who can pay. Only the rich can live. Right. It's I think it's David who has mentioned this before. Here in America, we live in a wealth care system, not a healthcare system. And in this country, we prioritize who can pay, because who can pay has access to that healthcare, versus an actual healthcare system prioritizes healthcare, right? That's the difference.
Where, the idea of freedom in America is, allowing a billionaire to amass so much wealth that he could become a trillionaire. Whereas my idea of freedom is ensuring that someone doesn't go bankrupt over medical bills.
Right. And the idea that you would even try to argue in the year of our Lord 2025 against universal healthcare when there's been it's such an exhausting freaking conversation, because we've already been through the studies and how much it costs. There's no debating here. It's just people who want poor people to suffer, even if it means they'll suffer themselves, and people who just want a better life for everybody. That's it. Yeah, you can have the finest healthcare here if you can afford it. Right. Exactly.
Your own.
It's just so freaking frustrating, man. Have some class solidarity, okay? Have some class solidarity, because guaranteed that chatter is not a billionaire or a capitalist, okay? I would bet American dollars that chatter is not a capitalist, okay? Is not a wealthy capitalist. So have some freaking solidarity, man. Jesus Christ. I'm tired. I'm tired of it, folks. But if he licks his boot hard enough, he might become one. Yeah, sorry. A temporarily embarrassed billionaire. Got it. Oh, my goodness. We have the conclusion to the Bob Menendez trial, folks. We've talked about this a couple times in the show. Former Senator Bob Menendez sentenced to 11 years for corruption and bribery. Man. So it sounds like laws do apply to politicians. It sounds like it's interesting that laws don't apply to certain politicians, say like a president, but nonetheless, I guess it's selective. Former New Jersey Democratic Senator Bob Menendez was sentenced today to 11 years in prison following his conviction on bribery and corruption charges after taking cash, a Mercedes-Benz and gold bar. This is like some like cartoon level stuff, man. Like, why don't you just do the corruption the normal way, right? And get like your stuff set up with PACs so that you can keep winning elections, or like get money laundered through other stuff like other members of Congress do. I mean, like, man, gold bars and Mercedes-Benz? What are you, the monopoly guy? Come on, man. Just do the corruption like every other Congress person does. Big bags of gold coins with dollar signs, like literally comic book stuff, cartoon level stuff. Saying gold bar in my pocket. The sentencing marks a dramatic fall for the lawmaker born to Cuban immigrants, who got his start in politics in Union City, New Jersey, and became one of the most powerful senators as chair of Foreign Relations Committee. Menendez was convicted last year of 16 felony counts for the long-running corruption scheme, making him the first U.S. senator charged and convicted of acting as an agent of a foreign government. The public cannot be led to believe the belief that you can get away with bribery, fraud, and betrayals of the district judge. Well, unfortunately, you can. You just have to be the president of the United States. He's the Scarface you bought on Temu. Menendez teared up as he spoke in court. You have before you a chastened man. Oh my God. Other than family, I've lost everything I ever cared about. For someone who spent his entire life in public service, every day I'm awake is a punishment. Yeah, well, you know, you should have thought about that before you accepted gold bars and a Mercedes-Benz. Like, look at this. Look at this. An exchange prosecutors alleged, yeah, it's like a movie. An exchange prosecutors alleged that Menendez pressured the U.S. Department of Agriculture over a monopoly on halal meat certification that benefited one of the businessmen he pushed. He pushed through military aid to Egypt and modulated his criticism of the country's human rights abuses. He also attempted to tamper with 2 criminal investigations tied to the other businessmen. We've kind of like been through the whole story. Anyways, lawyers asked the judge to allow Menendez to stay out of prison as he appeals the conviction. The criminal trial was not the first for the former senator, who was previously indicted on corruption charges in 2015 for allegedly accepting bribes. Like, I mean, come on, man. Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ. From a wealthy ophthalmologist in exchange for political favors. Following a mistrial in 2017, Menendez was acquitted. And in 2018, the Department of Justice dropping the charges that remained. The longtime politician was indicted in September of 23, along with his wife Nadine, but their trials were severed after she was diagnosed with cancer and began receiving treatment. Nadine Menendez has pleaded not guilty and is scheduled to go to trial in March. Yeah, allegedly. Allegedly. So that is the conclusion of the trial of Bob Menendez. Seriously, it's like out of a freaking cartoon movie. Anyways, a couple of things that we have to kind of just speed run through, because some of it's more serious than other, but you know, as we deal with this Trump administration, it's going to be difficult to keep up with everything. but we're gonna try our best to try to keep up with the more important stuff. The CDC ordered to stop working with the WHO immediately, upending expectation of an extended withdrawal. The U.S. public health officials have been told to stop working with the World Health Organization effective immediately. A U.S. CDC and prevention official, John, I'm not even going to try, sent a memo to senior leaders at the agency on Sunday night, telling them that all staff who work with the WHO must immediately stop their collaboration and await further guidance. Experts said the sudden stoppage was a surprise and would set back work on investigating and trying to stop outbreaks of the Marburg virus, Mpox and Mpox in Africa, as well as brewing global threats. It also comes as the health authorities around the world are monitoring bird flu outbreaks among U.S. livestock. The AP Press viewed a copy of the memo. How do you even pronounce this? Something song? Nkanga song? Necken song? I don't know. That's the best I got. Which said the stop work policy applied to all CDC staff engaging with the WHO, not the band, through technical working groups, coordinating centers, advisory boards, cooperative agreements, and other means, in person or virtual. It also says CDC staff are not allowed to visit WHO offices. President Trump last week issued an executive order to begin the process of withdrawing the U.S. from WHO, but that did not take immediate effect. Leaving the WHO requires the approval of Congress and the U.S. And that the U.S. meets its financial obligations for the current fiscal year. The U.S. also must provide a 1-year notice. His administration also told federal health agencies to stop most communications with the public through at least the end of the month. That's cool. So, like, if there's like a public health emergency, or say, like, I don't know, you have to be aware about certain outbreaks, then you're not going to get that until they resolve whatever's going on here. Man, that didn't take long. Donald Trump, like, literally is breaking government within, like, a couple weeks. It feels like it's forever, but really, like, this is just week 2, folks. Okay? It feels like it's longer. It feels like it's incredibly longer, but, like, this is just week 2. Okay? Quote, stopping communications and meetings with WHO is a big problem, said Dr. Jeffrey Klausner, a University of South California public health expert who collaborates with the World Health Organization on work against sexually transmitted infections. People thought there would be a slow withdrawal. This has really caught everyone with their pants down, said Dr. Klausner, who said he learned it off from somebody at the CDC. Talking to the WHO is a two-way street, he added, noting that the two agencies benefit from each other's expertise. The collaboration allows the U.S. to learn about new tests, new treatments, and emerging outbreaks, information which can help protect Americans abroad and at home. So, yeah, you know, that's cool. That's very nice. That's awesome. Man, I really hope there's no pandemic that just decides to pop up, because we're screwed. Only 206 more weeks to go, if we're lucky. Indeed. The CDC details 30 people to WHO and sends many millions of dollars through it to cooperative agreements. The U.S. agency also has some of the world's leading experts in infectious diseases and public health threats, and the two agency staffers are in daily contact about health dangers and how to stop them. Phenomenal. Phenomenal stuff. The collaboration halt isn't the only global health effect on Trump's executive order. Last week, the president froze spending on another critical program, PEPFAR, or the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. Cool. The anti-HIV program is credited with saving 25 million lives, including 5.5 million children, since it was started by the Republican President George Bush. But it was included in a Trump administration freeze on foreign aid spending, slated to last at least 3 months. PEPFAR provides HIV medication to more than 20 million people, and stopping its funding essentially stops their HIV treatment, said International AIDS Society President Beatrice, again, I'm not even going to try, Grinstein? I don't know how the J works. Anyways, said in a statement, if that happens, people are going to die and HIV will resurge. Reagan comes to mind. a U.S. health official confirmed the CDC was stopping its work with WHO. The person was not authorized to talk about the memo and spoke on condition of anonymity. A WHO spokesperson referred the questions about withdrawal to U.S. officials. Officials at the Department of Health and Human Services, i.e. the department that potentially RFK Jr. is going to lead, did not immediately respond to an emailed request for comment, and the CDC officials did not respond to AP's request to speak with Neck and Song about the memo. Cool. Fantastic stuff happening here. Man. We're going to be living off the seat of our pants for the next foreseeable future. So we previously talked about how absolute chaos has occurred when Trump has decided to freeze federal money to grants and programs. Well, apparently, now they are rescinding that because I guess the perceived backlash ? I don't know. Maybe it's just chaos is the point. I think David was the one that made this point, or was it Figueroa? I can't remember. In one of the videos we just watched, the point being is that they want to throw this curveball, and which undeniably did create a lot of chaos, so that they can argue, they can do their more nefarious stuff when people are paying attention, trying to put out this fire, which I think that this is what what we need to be talking about. It is rough, but I have tots. President Trump's budget office on Wednesday today rescinded a memo freezing spending on federal loans and grants less than 2 days after it sparked widespread confusion and legal challenges across the country. The memo, which was issued by Monday by the Office of Management and Budget, had frightened states, schools, organizations that rely on trillions of dollars from Washington. Administration officials said the pause was necessary to review whether spending aligned with Trump's executive orders on things like climate change, diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. Right, the woke stuff. Got it. First of all, that's not up to you, man. If Congress passes that, legislation that says that these funds need to go to these programs, that's not optional, okay? Like, it doesn't matter what Trump thinks about where the money is going. It's not his call. Anyways, on Wednesday, they sent out a two-sentence notice rescinding the original memo. The reversal was the latest sign that even with unified control of Washington, Trump plans to dramatically and rapidly reshape the government has... Wait, what? Trump's plan to dramatically and rapidly reshape the government has limits. Right. It's not Emperor Trump's call, you say? As of right now. You heard about the 20 feet... Didn't you come in here already with this? If you want this to be legal, they need to spell it out line by line to Congress for approval. The reason needs to be for efficiency. That would be the reason to remove it. Congress would have to remove the items. Look, man, I'm telling you, as I told you yesterday, I'm sorry, I just don't care. Like, that's not, that I just don't care. There are far more pressing issues. There are far more pressing issues that deserve more immediate attention. Anyways, the administration officials insisted that despite the confusion, their actions still had the intended effect. What type of shape of egg? Their action still had the intended effect by underscoring to federal agencies their obligations to abide by Trump's executive order. The executive order issued by the president on funding review remains in full force and effect and will rigorously be implemented by all agencies and departments. The White House press secretary Karoline Leavitt said, blaming the confusion on the courts and news outlets, not the administration. This action should effectively end the court case and allow the government to focus on enforcing president's orders about controlling federal spending. Right, but like that's the thing though. Like the president can't control federal spending because that is the prerogative of Congress. Okay, the president can't control federal spending because it's not up to the president. Congress explicitly has the power of the purse. The White House's change in direction caught Congress off guard, particularly Trump's Republican allies who had defended him through the brief saga. This is Donald Trump. He throws hand grenades in the middle of the room, then cleans it up afterwards. I think the guy's a genius. Oh man, dude, genius. Awesome. Genius. Like, you literally had people worried about whether or not they were going to be able to access Medicaid because the website was messed up. You had people wondering whether or not the school was going to have funding. You think that's genius? You think that's funny? About people's real material lives being affected by whether or not they don't know if the daycare that they rely on for a job is going to get the federal funding. I mean, like, you think that's funny? I don't know, man. North Dakota is a weird place full of weird people, in my opinion. I refuse to think that North Dakota is a real place. I'm here now. Okay. Well, I suppose if we can get confirmation that North Dakota exists, then I change my mind. Kramer acknowledged having the initial memo may have generated too much political heat, with red and blue states raising alarm over the funding freeze, but the senator suggested Trump maybe didn't understand the breadth of what had been proposed. So he's saying that Trump doesn't understand the ramifications of his actions. Huh. That's pretty discomforting, considering that's the president of the United States. But Democrats said the White House had overreached beyond what, quote, Americans want. Most people voted for cheaper eggs. Are we sure about that? I'm assuming that some people thought that they were going to get cheaper eggs, question mark. But like, yeah, I don't know if that was the main topic. They did not vote for chaos. Yeah, I don't know, man. You should talk to the Trump cult. And even if you're one of those people that like genuinely believe that Trump was going to lower the price of the cost of living, because like what this means, what they're talking about, it's like, oh, we want cheaper eggs. What they mean is the cost of living is too high. Groceries, just everyday stuff is just too high because the wages are not keeping up with the cost of. Ooh, I almost yeeted my thing. You're not keeping up with inflation. At no point did Trump ever say that he wasn't about the chaos. He literally revels in this. That was the whole premise of his drain the swamp stuff, right? To shake up Washington. To slash the government. That's what you voted for. The funding pause was scheduled to go into effect at 5 p.m. Tuesday. It was stayed by a federal judge until at least Monday after an emergency hearing requested by nonprofit groups that received the federal grants. An additional lawsuit by Democratic state attorney generals was also pending. I think that Democrats need to write and record notes because these people don't understand anything, and these people don't understand anything. They've walked and seen birds in the air, and they think that it's they think that they're going to do something. Yeah, I mean, like, the point being is, honestly, the Democratic Party needs to get its head out of its ass. Really, without being much more vulgar, Democratic Party needs to get its head out of its arse. Imagine, it's hard to imagine losing to such a like Trump, but the Democrats and lefties managed. Even Muslim people voted for Trump. Hey, that's cool, man. But like, no, can we not use that? Like, is that necessary? People stayed home in Michigan. That happened too. Wrong. We have stats on this. The majority of Muslims in Dearborn voted for Trump. This is public information. Well, maybe in that section that might be true. But it is also true that a lot of people stayed home. Although Trump had promised to return Washington upside down if elected to a second term, I mean, literally what we were just talking about, the effects of his efforts to pause funding were being felt far from the nation's capital. Organizations like Meals on Wheels, which receives federal money to deliver food to the elderly, were worried about getting cut off. Even temporary interruptions in funding could cause layoffs or delayed in public services. Right, and like they were trying to deny all of this. They were trying to deny all of this. That is not going to affect individual people, but it will. Is that really a way of talking to somebody, much less a mod? Man, I have a feeling I've seen this username before. Yeah. Yeah, this kind of tracks. Yeah, this tracks. Quote, this is an important victory for American people. I don't have all the info stored in my head, but I didn't lie. No, they're zeroing in on one specific area, which I don't dispute, because it's quite possible that that's true, that in this specific area in Dearborn, Michigan, the majority of like Muslim people is that's possible. I could even buy that. But to say that like also a lot of people stayed home, that's also true. I mean, like, you could look at how much, maybe not just Michigan, but in other places too, how much in these important swing states, how much voters stayed home. Getting banned in Ugopnik, now that's wild. I'm more interested in like the banning of like Lumiru. Lumiru is one of the most like wholesome people on this platform. So like, yeah, that's a red flag. Anyways. Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer of New York said that Americans fought back and Donald Trump backed off. Okay, yeah, hey, real quick, what the F are the Democratic Party doing, man? Like, holy crap, this is an important victory, yada, yada, yada. Okay. Anyways, so the point being is that the federal grant memo has been rescinded. So, yeah. So after all that is going on, Trump has officially signed the Laken Riley Act, which we went over, and in that little ceremony, we got some really, really disturbing stuff. This is the kind of stuff that we need to be paying attention to. President Trump on Wednesday today signed the Laken Riley Act. I believe Echo Resto Dragon was bringing this up earlier, giving federal authorities broader power to deport immigrants in the U.S. Illegally who have been accused of crime. So not convictions, right? Just accused of crime. So, that guy is accused of whatever. Make up the most heinous stuff, accuse them of that, and bye-bye. So, okay, whatever. Horrible bill, disgusting. But in that, he also announced at the ceremony that his administration planned to send the, quote, worst criminal aliens to a detention center in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. Folks, this is not a drill. This is the real deal, folks. The bipartisan act, the first piece of legislation approved during Trump's second term, was named for Riley, the 22-year-old Georgia nursing student who was slain last year by a Venezuelan man in the U.S. illegally. Quote, she was a warm light of art and kindness. It is a tremendous tribute to your daughter what's taking place. That's all I can say. It's so sad we have to be doing it. Trump had promised to drastically increase deportations, but he also said that at the signing that some of the people being sent back to their home countries couldn't be counted on to stay there. So now you see how this stuff creeps up, right? So now we're not talking about just deporting people, right? But now we're saying, well, actually, it's not just enough to deport people back to their country, but unfortunately, we're going to have to put you in a high secure facility where we put the worst of the worst bad guys. Remember 9/11? Yeah, that's where we're going to put them because, they're criminals. They're the worst of the worst, so they can't actually go back to their country. We're going to have to put them in the bad place. Some of them are so bad that we don't even trust the countries to hold them because we don't want them coming back. So we're going to send them to Guantanamo. He said that he would soon sign an executive order directing federal officials to get facilities in Cuba to receive migrant criminals. Again, he just signed the Laken Riley Act, which says that we can deport people who are accused of crimes. Accused, not convicted. It's not what that said. Accused. Just seeing chat been lurking, but banned in 35 channels. Sheesh. Next, they'll be putting them on, quote, trains. Yeah, I mean, like, nothing possibly could go wrong in a essentially a black site. Right? No human rights abuses could possibly happen in a black site. To not like, these aren't like hardcore, like terrorist criminals, like, how we supposedly were propagandized that that's the kind of people that go there. Like literally like Alcatraz, okay? Like a fortified Alcatraz. No, we're just deporting brown people there. So yeah, that's not freaking disturbing. We have 30,000 beds in Guantanamo to detain the worst criminal aliens threatening the American people. Hey, real quick question. What happens when you're out of the beds? What do you do with those people? Because I think that's an important question that the media needs to ask ad nauseum. Like, hey, real quick follow-up question. Like, we're already entering into some really weird, dark territory here, but I'm just curious. What are you going to do with people after you've filled the 30,000 beds? And they need to ask that question over and over and over and over and over every press conference. Like, hey, you mentioned that you wanted to put 30,000 migrant criminals, the worst of the worst. I don't know what that means, because we're talking about the context here is you're signing a law that says we can deport people based on accusations. So what's going to happen after you reach that 30,000, right? Like, because there's only so much space, right? What exactly are you going to do with those people? I smoke gas. The move would immediately double U.S. detention lockup capacities. He said Guantanamo, he said, is a tough place to get out of. And surely no human rights violations happened there at all. And subsequent, because, you know, the oversight of Guantanamo Bay is impeccable. In subsequent comments to reporters outside the White House, new Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem said of expanded detention facilities that we're building it out and that the administration would seek funding via spending bills Congress is set to consider. The administration's border czar, Tom Homan, said Customs and Immigration Enforcement would run the facility in Cuba. Man, like, I mean, you know, when I say that I'm going to start calling ICE just the Gestapo, like, this is what I mean, right? Like, this is just a division of the Gestapo, right? Or the SS, maybe. You know, calling ICE the SS might be actually better because, like, the SS had a lot of, like, subdivisions. So I think this is, like, probably a better better analogous. It's probably a better analogy, or comparison, maybe. So I guess we should just call them the SS. Would run the facility in Cuba, and that the, quote, worst of the worst could go to Guantanamo. Still, the details of Trump's plan were not immediately clear. The U.S. military base has been used to house detainees from U.S. war on terrorism for years. But authorities have also detained migrants at sea at a facility known as Migrant Operations Center in Guantanamo, a site that the U.S. has long leased from the Cuban government. Many of those housed have been migrants from Haiti and Cuba. The Supreme Court ruled in 2008 that enemy combatants in the war on terror held without charge at the military prison in Guantanamo had the right to challenge their detention in federal court. But the justices did not decide whether the president had the authority to detain people at all. Before Trump took office, the Democratic administration of Barack Obama and Joe Biden worked to reduce the number of terrorism suspects held at Guantanamo. Laken Riley went out for a run when she was killed by Jose Antonio Ibarra, a Venezuelan national who was in the country illegally. Ibarra was found guilty and sentenced to life. I renewed at the end of the show. Yeah, you did, but no problem. Thank you. Your support is much appreciated, whether it's at the beginning, middle, or end, or after the show. Thank you, Cognizant. Ibarra had been detained, or had been arrested illegally entry in 2002, and then released to pursue his case in immigration court. Federal officials said he was arrested by New York police for child endangerment and released. Police said he was also issued a citation for shoplifting in Georgia in 2023. The act quickly passed a new Republican-controlled Congress with, of course, Democratic support, even though immigrant rights activists said it could possibly lead to large roundouts of people for offenses as minor as shoplifting. Right, but, like, that's the point. Fear is the point. The swift passage and Trump's signing 9 days after taking office has the potent symbolism for conservatives. To critics, the measure has taken advantage of a tragedy that could lead to chaos and cruelty. Exactly. While doing little to fight crime or overhauling the immigration system, Riley's mother thanked Trump while holding back tears. He said he would secure our borders and he would never forget about Laken, and he hasn't. Well, he's not done either, but okay. I'm pretty sure Donald Trump could care less about that young lady. Several top Republican lawmakers in Nome attended the signing ceremony as a Democratic Senator John Fetterman, man, as a co-sponsor. Phenomenal. What a clown. Under the new law, federal officials would have to detain any immigrant arrested or charged with crimes such as theft or assaulting a police officer or offenses that injure or kill someone. That's already a thing, dude. If you kill someone, it doesn't matter if you're undocumented or not. You're going to be arrested. State attorney generals could sue the U.S. government for harm caused by federal immigration decisions, potentially allowing the leaders of conservative states to help dictate immigration policy set by Washington. Cool. Some Democrats have questioned whether it's constitutional. Immigrants advocates are bracing for mass detention that say will mean costly construction of immigrant lockup facilities to house the people arrested. And again, what are you going to do with these people? They don't just get to celebrate, they get to use this for their mass deportation agenda, said Noreen Shah, the Deputy Director of Government Affairs and Equality Division of the ACLU. The ACLU says that the act can allow people to be mandatorily locked up potentially for years because at some point in their lives, perhaps a decade ago, perhaps decades ago, they were accused of nonviolent offenses. Veo que vayamos de mal a peor. Vamos a las antiguas piedras. Yeah, we're going to the Stone Age, and we're going from bad to worse. Indeed. Hannah Flem, the interim senior director of policy at the International Refugee Assistance Project, said the measure violates immigrants' basic rights by allowing for detaining people who have not been charged with any wrongdoing, much less convicted. The latent fear from the election cycle of looking soft on crime snowballed into aiding and abetting Trump's total conflation of immigration with crime. Yep, 100% man, 100%. The Democratic Party is like, oh well, don't worry, you know, we'll also be tough. We'll also be tough on immigration. We also agree that we need to, be stronger on immigration or whatever. We don't want to look soft on crime, man. Thanks for nothing. Seriously, I think it's pivotal to understand this bill framed as connected to a tragic death is pretext to fortify a mass deportation system, right? And we're all gonna freaking, we're all being billed this as some kind of like safety and security bill. Not gonna lie, folks, the situation kind of sucks. The situation kind of sucks. Floating this idea of trying to use Guantanamo Bay as a way of permanently putting people in camps in these detention facilities, because that's what inadvertently, that's inevitably, that's what this is. If they carry out this plan, it's literally just putting people in camps, and under the pretense that there's some kind of like bad, vile criminals who just can't go back to their country because they're gonna just come back and poison the blood of our country again. So we need to do something about these vile people so that they never hurt the nation again. That's freaking dark, man. Not gonna lie. But here we are. It's absolutely bonkers considering the history too. Yep, abuse and lack of accountability. Yeah, like we have no idea. We have zero transparency as to what happens in those like black sites. I can't imagine that anything good is going to come out of that. Echo Resto Dragon, if you are if you're still in chat, might not be as bad as Texas. Yeah. If you're still in chat, can you copy paste that Anne Frank quote again? Can you copy paste that Anne Frank quote, please? I'm like 99% sure you posted it. Pienso que nuestra hispano población necesita ir a chino en el avión. Terrible things are happening outside at any time of night and day. Poor helpless people are being dragged out of their homes. They're allowed only to take a knapsack and a little cash with them. But we'll replace. They're only allowed to take a bag and a little bit of cash, and even then, they're robbed of these possessions on the way. Families are torn apart. Men and women and children are separated. Children come home from school to find that their parents have disappeared. Hey, if I told you that, if I told you that, and I didn't say this, this was an Anne Frank quote, and I'll repeat this again. Like this, honestly, you know, you could have heard something like this out of an interview after one of these ICE raids. Like I'm not even joking. After one of these SS raids, like I'm not even joking. If I told you that, like, oh look, an interview came out and like this person. This person was outside their complex and was interviewed by the local news, and this is what they had to say about the ICE raids. Like this is completely interchangeable, right? Like this is completely interchangeable. If I didn't tell you that this was Anne Frank and the context of where that came from, like this is literally like completely a possible quote that you could have taken out. If I could literally just be like, yeah, so today we're gonna watch or today we're gonna listen to an interview quote by someone who was outside their apartment complex after an ICE raid was done. And like, I mean, scary stuff, man. Scary stuff. Perfect. I'm gonna keep this here. Thank you. Because like that's kind of where we're at, and we're gonna have to keep calling it out each and every day. This is not an overreaction. This is in fact an underreaction. We as a country are underreacting. I don't care how possible the actual end game that Trump wants to do is. I don't care how much quote constraints he has. The point is, we need to call this out now and stop it now at every single possible point in every way, shape, or form. This is not a drill. This is the real deal, because this is how it starts. This is how it starts. Like, oh, you know, Hitler would never do that. He's just one guy, man. He's just one guy. He barely got 30% of the popular vote. He barely has 30% approval. You know, the I don't know what they called it back then. I guess the parliament. They you know, he's got to go through all that. It doesn't matter how many guardrails exist. And certainly there are more obstacles. I will say this. There are more obstacles than you know, the prior iteration of Nazis and fascists. But nonetheless, this is the kind of stuff that you need to deal with now. Not when they're getting ready to build the camps and be like, oh yeah, I guess it is Nazism. You know, no, that's not the time to be like, oh, I guess we need to deal with this. No. This has to be dealt with now, before it even gets to that point. So yeah, this will continue, and we will be there at every step of the way. Yeah, we needed this yesterday. Remember, folks, anger and sadness and fear and despair are all perfectly normal to experience. It's just a matter of taking that, acknowledging that, and then channeling that. All right, folks. It is just over 7 o'clock. I gotta get I gotta get out of here. Thank you all for joining. I appreciate it. And thank you really for hanging out during these not so poggers times. Because it really does mean a lot. Community is everything. Just by virtue of being here and just hanging out in the chat is awesome, and I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you. If you want to join the Discord, you can. Please consider joining the Discord. Never forget the first rule of the fanatic. When you become obsessed with the enemy, you become the enemy. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, follow on Blue Sky too. I'm kind of I kind of forgot about shilling Blue Sky. I need to make a little command. But yeah, I'm the same username on Blue Sky, A Difficult Truth. So consider following there. Subscribe to the Substack, new article, it's free. Join the Discord if you want to just keep up with the channel or just hang out with some cool people, okay? Discord's awesome. If you want to support the channel directly, consider checking out the merch store and hitting that exclamation mark tip. It does help us directly. Thank you for the subscriptions and thank you for the follows. There's quite a few of you that have followed, and I appreciate that. Thank you to the Comrade Kenny, Old Lobster, OP Man Bros, the Chef Ravens Tavern, and Peacefire, who we raided yesterday. Thank you for these offline follows. I appreciate it, and welcome. Thank you. Bakita says join. Indeed. Feel free. We do some cool stuff on the Discord. Thank you guys for stopping by. We'll be back tomorrow around 5 p.m. Eastern time. Spread the word, folks. This is one of the chillest places to be for the news, for the politics. As always, folks, please stay safe. Please take care of each other. I love you all, and I hope to see you guys in the next one tomorrow, 5 p.m. Eastern time. See ya. Phew. All right, hang tight, folks. Hang tight. All right, folks, hang tight. We're heading out in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Bye-bye.